Welcome to Dark Sorcery. I'm Alfredo Martinez, and I have with me the one and only Eric McCormick. Eric, how you doing?
Hey Alfredo, how you doing?
Doing great. Good to have you on. And
Happy to.
go ahead and tell. Yeah, it's great to have you on, man. I'm looking forward to this. I'm excited about it. Go ahead and tell everyone how your spiritual journey began.
Well, I started my study of magic in prison. I was incarcerated and I came across books, of course. I spent a lot of time reading, and the more I read, the more my own understanding of what it is kind of developed. And really, if it hadn't developed there, I don't think it would have developed the same because I had a lot of time to really focus on myself and to focus on what I was doing. And I sort of turned my cell into a monastery. And I spent a lot of time meditating, writing, reading, and this all kind of grew out from that.
Mhm. Yeah, I think that when you're isolated and you're alone, that's kind of when you focus more inwardly and discover more of who you are and what your potential is. I think, a lot of people complain about being alone, but I think that's where you recharge and become more powerful and discover more about yourself. Would you agree?
Absolutely. There's a lot to be said for a little bit of isolation, and I don't recommend people go to prison just to just to study magic, but it definitely helped me. And you hear a lot about that historically, shamans going out into the woods, the Christian whole mode of going out into the desert and fasting, this whole kind of idea that divine gnosis comes through isolation is something really relevant. And I think that you have to kind of silence the voices around you so that you can hear the voices inside of you. And I think that that has a lot to do with it.
Well, yeah, I mean, like take for instance with, meditation. It's about silencing all the noise and then just focusing on, inside and that. And I think that has a lot of relevance to what you're saying right now. And so,
Yeah, meditation is a huge thing. A lot of people tend to ignore it, but everything that I've read and everything that I've experienced is meditation is critical to focusing your will and to deciding what your will actually is and to, weaponizing it, to honing it.
yeah, it's kind of like the way I see it is it's kind of like you turn on a when you turn on a radio, trying to tune into a radio station, you get some static, you get some noise. When you meditate, you just clear out that noise, and then you get a clear understanding of your true will and that what your true will is trying to say to you. And you just go off of that. But too many people like to live with the noise, and they get mixed signals and wonder why they're getting mixed signals. Well, maybe that's a clue.
We're addicted to the noise in a big extent, and the noise is good also. I think another part of meditation, aside from just distilling the message, is becoming able to control your thoughts. If you can't stay focused through a meditation, then you're not going to be able to stay focused through a ritual or while you're writing or while you're doing anything. It brings a mindfulness to everything that you do that I think is really important. And a lot of us today really lack that mindfulness and awareness of everything.
Yeah, I mean, I think that quieting your mind, learning how to meditate is crucial in raising energy because anyone can set up an altar, sit down, do a spell. They can go through an elaborate thing and do a ritual. You can do all that, but if you're not raising a good amount of energy to send out, man, you're not going to get much of a result. What do you think about that?
I agree with that completely. You can copy a recipe, for example, out of a cookbook, and if it was made by a great chef, you're going to be able to probably make something edible. but it's not going to be as good as if you went to the chef himself and had him prepare it, because all the little nuances aren't going to be there. You know, people want a
Yeah.
cookie cutter instruction for how to do anything, and that just doesn't exist. It takes experience and it takes a lot of the personal effort. You know, people like when you're cooking a dish, to use that metaphor, people can taste the love that you put into it and the time and the concern, you know, and that's a big part
Mm.
of magic, and it's a big part of everything. I don't see as much separation from my magical practice as from, say, my poetry, from working in the garden, from exercising, from practicing martial arts, from taking a shower and
Well,
shaving before this interview.
yeah, I mean that goes with, but that not only applies to magic, it applies to everything. I mean, like people who, like to work with plants a lot, people who have a green thumb, people who, some people say, well, I like, I learned a lot from this teacher, not so much that, even though the material was the same in the classroom, this guy had a unique way of pointing it out. It's the same way. You can take a magical book and, yeah, the author had phenomenal results with it, but if you can apply it sloppily, or you could, just slide in a sloppy way with it. But I definitely get what you're saying. Now, what occult books have inspired you along your way?
Well,
Books in general, or occult books?
a lot. And it's so hard to narrow down. That's like asking my favorite song. You know, it's going to change
Right.
situationally based on my mood. Every 10 minutes, if you ask me my favorite song, you'll get a different answer. But the books that really continuously resonate with me and really sort of define my practice, so to speak, were the books by Edward Thorson, first of all. I started off as a rune magician, and the books Futhark, The Nine Doors of Midgard, Lords of the Left Hand Path, these all were very critical, and they were sort of my first guides. And for the first several years, I really stuck to that and kept it. I was a purist as far as that goes. But other books started to resonate with me. Um, the Chaos Sigil Magic of Frater UD was inspirational. The books by Don Webb, Energy Magic of the Vampire, showed me how shamanism can kind of be reformatted and applied today. And his whole kind of Setchian left hand path was important too. How to Be a Modern Magus really resonated with me. And the books by Kobe Michael, um, the Poison Path Herbal and the Poison Path Grimoire, really opened me up, because through him
Mm.
I saw that you don't have to be. It doesn't have to be a grab bag to be sort of eclectic. It doesn't have to be just a sort of random smattering of bits and pieces. It can follow a logical and coherent structure, and still you take what applies and you leave what doesn't. And when
Mm.
we talked before, one of the examples I gave was in the martial arts, like different boxers, you're going to have different styles. And the same style isn't going to work for everybody. You're just not going to be able to copy it. If Mike Tyson tried to box like Muhammad Ali, he would have gotten beat a lot. You
Yeah.
know, nobody can quite do it. And at a certain level, you start to really take the bits and pieces that you learn and apply what works and leave behind what doesn't. The problem is a lot of people starting out, they don't know what works yet. So they just pick what they like or what sort of resonates with them, and nothing ever works completely. And then they either give it up or they end up just kind of wandering off in the weeds and never having that discipline. I think the discipline, is what really is what makes it possible to bring everything together and sort of make it work for you.
Well, I mean, some people have the discipline, some people don't. And then
Yeah.
I think that's what, separates people who get started on, who go far on the path, and some those who don't. And then you have those who they accomplish a lot, and then they just get lazy, They figure, well, I've done a lot, and then they just get in this comfort zone, and then they just miss out on so many opportunities, and they just become armchair occultists. Would you say that's very common?
Yeah, that's you see a lot of that.
Yeah.
And not only that, but people that get into their own structure too much. They find a few things that work and then they never look outside of that. And instead of saying, well, that might work for you or this is valid for you, they just say, well, this is how it's done. And there's a lot of people trying to tell people, oh, you're not doing that right, or that isn't how you do this. And some of that's helpful and some of that's necessary, but people really need to find out for themselves. And if something's working for somebody, it's not really another person's place to tell them that they're doing it wrong.
Mm-hmm. Everybody, the beauty of magic is it's very personal. It's very subjective. It's not the same thing for everybody. It's not like working a job and saying, okay, everybody's going to do this. It's everyone has their own way of doing things, whether it's divination, whether it's spell work. They all have their energy resonates differently with different things.
Yeah. I think that more so than being subjective, because the word subjective to me, it makes it feel like there's no objective result. And that I reject that entirely. I think that if magic doesn't have objective results that you can actually quantify and record, then you're just really role playing and it's a fantasy.
Yeah.
You know, if you're just playing pretend, then that's fine. And if you're just doing it for theatrics, that's also fine if that's what you're into. If you're trying to make results, if you're trying to work your will and to weave the web of weird, so to speak, then there has to be a result. There has to be a scar left behind. There has to be something that you can record and measure. People try to separate magic from science too much, I feel. And I think that some scientific method applied to magic is critical in determining if what you're doing is working or not.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. I mean, magic really is a lot of it is getting results and seeing what works and what doesn't. I mean, trying different things. Whether you want to do a spell out of a book or something that personal from yourself, um, then either way is fine. You just see what works and what doesn't. But usually, you get better results from stuff that comes directly from you. Now, you can get some stuff from a book and kind of tweak it a little bit and see what works. But once you have so much experience, you can just you can just go ahead and make up spells on the fly, you know.
Well, when you get some experience, also you can discern what you read a little bit better. And I got lucky that I ran across the right books in order. Because if I
Mm,
had gone into some of the more, I don't know, I, new agey at the risk of, you know,
yeah,
but if I had run into some of
there's
those
plenty of them out there.
that are all unverified personal gnosis and things like that, then I probably wouldn't have gotten as deep into it as what I did.
Right, right, definitely. Now, you are the author of the Book of Sin and Shadow by, of course, yourself, Eric McCormick. Now, anyone who's watching, you can pick that up at your local Barnes and Noble or at barnesandnoble.com. Link will be below in the video description. We'll get more into that. But what I noticed about going through your book is your poems, your spells are like poems. They're all written in poetic format. Now, where did your interest in poems begin?
Ever since I was a child, my mom used to read books of nursery rhymes to me, like a lot of moms do. And I was just always fascinated with what wasn't said in between the words and how a story could be told more impactfully and how there could be things that you would think about much later, the long after you finished reading the words, your body's still digesting that and coming up with new meanings from it and still thinking about it. And it's always resonated with me, I guess. And so I've always had sort of a fascination with words and the way they work together and what's in between the words.
Yeah, people don't realize that what you say, basically, your words are spells, and the way you say things, the way you word things, has a big difference in how your life path turns out because you're commanding things. I mean, you know what I mean.
Yes, words are so powerful. And we say that, a lot of people say that without really thinking about it fully. But when you think about it, the power of the words you use is paramount because if you say the right words at the right time, in the right context to the right person, and just like with any magical ritual, it's all about timing and placement. But if you use the right words at the right time to the right person, you can literally make anything happen in your life. And if that's not magic, I don't know what is. You can make someone fall in love with you. You can make somebody hate you. You can start a war. You can end a war. You can make yourself fabulously rich. You can make yourself destitute by using the wrong words at the wrong time. So
Yeah,
people really underestimate the power of words. And I think it's important to know a lot of words and to use the correct words at the
yeah.
correct time, not just in poetry, but in life.
Well, I mean, that's one reason why I encourage. I mean, it's good. It's great to learn magic on, and some people have learned by magic through just YouTube videos or just learning from people, word of mouth. It's good to read books though from time to time because you expand your vocabulary. And when you expand your vocabulary, you expand your potential for greater incantations. Now, me personally, I found it helpful to more effective when my incantations are more poetic, whether they rhyme or whatever. But as long as they come from deep inside and have deep meaning and they sound more poetic, I get a better result. Is it the same with you?
Absolutely. And I think it's always been that way. Probably as long as there has been spoken magic, there has probably been poetics involved with it because people understand the power of poetry, of distilling your words into a more powerful, fewer number of words, and using the power of rhyme and alliteration to increase the emphasis of the words that you use. To me, there's no
Mhm.
difference between poetry and magic. There's absolutely no separation at all. A poem
I
is a
don't think there
spell.
is either. Yeah.
Magic is a poem. I mean, it's exactly, there's no separation. And I think that really when people think about it, it's like that for everybody.
Yeah. Now, tell me what some of your favorite poets are. Me personally, I like Edgar Allan Poe and a few others. But what are some poets that are your favorites that have inspired you?
I really like Charles Baudelaire a lot. Of course, everybody likes Poe, but Baudelaire was the first really transgressive poet that I discovered. And I didn't discover him until, relatively later in life. I didn't read Baudelaire as a child, but when I found him, it was at just the right time. And he sort of lived in this liminal space where he took these really things that society considered ugly at the time, especially during the Victorian era, when sexuality was sort of hushed and kept behind closed doors, and people didn't talk about addiction. But there was this raging opium problem where people were, getting strung out and dying. And Baudelaire took these things and he not only put them into a context that people could understand, but he made them something beautiful, and he really took his pain and made it a thing that was just gorgeous. And there's something so admirable and sad and amazing all at the same time about that. He's one that really always resonated with me a lot.
Right on. Now, you had done a post on the book, The Poison Path, and then on that post, you said something that really stood out to me. You said there are books that inform, books that entertain, and books that serve as keys. Now, can you expand more on that statement?
Yeah, when you read a really good book, and the example that I used was the Bible. Edgar Casey read the Bible every year that he was alive. One time he read the Bible through. And so for him, he used those passages to open avenues in his mind that a lot of people probably wouldn't have noticed. And the same keys don't work for everybody. But when you get a really good book that really opens something up, and it doesn't just open it up in your mind, it makes it click in your life and in the world around you. With the Poison Path books by Kobe Michael in particular, when I read them, it sort of it made things click around me, and it sort of brought everything into focus and an understanding that I hadn't had before. And it really taught me to tie together the different parts of my life into something magical. So to take all the compartmentalized sections of my life and it opened them up to each other in a way. Anytime that you have something that opens a door between two unconnected things in your life and connects them, that's the kind of key that I'm talking about.
Right. It just resonates with you at the right time. Because
Yeah,
like we were talking about before, you could read the same book, uh, on a different day and get something different out of it.
absolutely. And the best books are ones that you can read and you'll catch a passage that you've read maybe a half a dozen times, but that passage just all of a sudden resonates with you because of something that you've got going on or because of a problem that you've been wrestling with. And at other times in your life, you weren't wrestling with that problem, so the passage didn't leap out at you as much. And then all of a
Mm.
sudden, you've got this problem, and you read this one paragraph in a book that you've read half a dozen times, and you're like, damn, that's what it means. That's what I
Yeah.
needed right there. And there's something beautiful about that, being able to. And another thing that brings up a thought that just jumped into my head. Somebody writes a thing and then somebody else reads it, and they may have two completely different takes on it. It may
Mm.
resonate with me differently than the person who wrote it. And that's something beautiful too. You and I can read the same book and we're going to
Mm.
pick different passages that resonate with us. Different things are going to be important to us. Different things are going to reflect us differently. And we're still going to find the beauty in it, but it's going to be completely different and unique for each of us. And I think that the best books have a lot of that also.
Well, if you've seen some of the study videos on this channel, that's why I like to do study videos with other people because I'll read a certain book and someone else will read a certain book and I'll say, well, let's turn to this page and I'll read a paragraph. I'll give my take on it, but then the other person will have something completely different to say about it. And that makes for good conversation. So yeah, I definitely agree with you on that.
To go
Now
back to what we
I
were talking
understand.
about a
Go
second
ahead.
ago, real quick, before we move on.
Yeah.
Um, it is important to learn. It's kind of in a vacuum at first, I think, that
Mhm.
separation. But then it's really important to come back and compare and contrast with other people and get
Mhm.
feedback and hear their take
Yeah.
on it. So, I mean, both things are necessary to the working of magic. And I just thought of that because of what we were talking about earlier.
Yeah. I completely agree with you 100%. 100%. And I also understand that you're also into herbalism. And so one question I have for you is, what would you say is the biggest mistake people make in herbalism?
The single biggest mistake that I see or that I hear people talk about is their lack of empathy for what they work with. They look at the plants as just material, and they
Mhm.
use it in tonics or in their potions or whatever it is that they're making, and they burn it as incense, but they don't see the plant for a spirit guide, for a teacher, like it actually is. You know, and the reason that certain plants resonate with certain types of workings, like say I work with hemlock a lot because it just so happens there's a field of hemlock around the garden where I work. So hemlock is really good at teaching you how to dissolve boundaries, how to take back what you've lost, how to reclaim what's been taken from you, how to still the unimportant noises, how to kill what doesn't need to be there, and how to cause yourself to thrive. And if I didn't look at it as a spiritual being, I wouldn't have been able to gather all of that from it. So my work with it becomes much more nuanced and particular, and I'm able to use it in a lot of rituals of that nature because of my understanding of it. And I think a lot of people really limit themselves by not looking at plants as entities, but just looking at them as objects.
Yeah, I agree. And they don't realize that there's life, you know, that plants are alive, you know, and they have a history to them. They have, you know, had feelings in them and everything that contributes to something that is living. So, yeah, 100% I agree with you. Now, when going through your book, there's a lot of poems in there, and I like the poetic style. What would you say is your favorite poem in your book?
Some of those poems are really old, and it's also the least esoteric thing that I have written. I had a couple more books in the chamber
Mm,
because I spent a lot of time writing and I had a lot of time
yeah.
to do that. And I've been writing poetry my whole life, and this is the first time that I've actually published a book. So it's a little bit more attuned to a mainstream audience than a lot of my more esoteric works that are going to be coming out
Right.
presently. My favorite poem in there is probably the first one, The Tongue Between Runes, because it's it shows the sort of space between, and it gives importance to those liminal spaces and the things that we don't say,
Mm,
and the unspoken presence that exists in the words that we use.
okay. Right on. Yeah, I enjoyed that one as well. Um, I enjoyed quite a few of them, actually.
Thank you.
Um, yeah, and what would you, if someone's watching this and they're just starting out on their spiritual path, what advice would you give to them?
Don't let anybody tell you how to do it. Take advice and learn on a framework of tradition. But at the same time, if you do a thing and it works for you, then keep doing it and refine it. And don't let other people tell you that there's a wrong way to be a magician or a right way to be a sorcerer, or that's not how you be a pagan, or that's not how we worship. There's nobody that can tell you what you feel personally. And if it works for you, then it's working. So take advice, never shut yourself off from advice. But at the same time, find the bits and pieces that resonate with you and keep those, because it's a very personal thing and it's very personalized and it's very special to each person. Each person's practice is going to end up being something unique and beautiful to them.
Hmm. Yeah, and one thing, another thing I would like to add is that as you progress in your spiritual path, don't just stick to one author, don't just stick to one particular person you're learning from or one genre. It's good to keep your mind open and expand and see what else is out there. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So,
And I think a lot of people like to put themselves in a box and say, oh, I'm this kind of magician, so I only do this kind of
yeah.
magic. But really, sometimes I will read things with an author that I disagree with in theory, just to see what's different and just to kind of see the way other people do it. And who knows, maybe learn something useful, you know? Um, I think a lot of people are too close-minded, even in such a you know, magic is supposed to be really an open-minded kind of practice, but I think a lot of people in everything are scared of getting outside of their own box and being found out to be wrong.
Mhm. Yeah, definitely. And there's nothing, you're going to make mistakes from time to time. That's how you learn. I mean, there's been times when I've had to admit I was wrong, you know, and just go back to the playbook and just kind of look over my stuff and just, okay, how do we fix things and go from here? So it's okay to be wrong sometimes, but just make sure you correct yourself. So
Absolutely.
yeah. So the Book of Sin and Shadow by Eric McCormick, available at your local Barnes& and Noble bookstore, also available on barnesandnoble.com. Link below in the video description. Make sure you click that link and check it out. He's also got a couple more links below in the video description. Make sure you check those out as well. All of Eric's work. Eric, thank you for your time. I really appreciate you coming onto the show.
Thank you, Alfredo. I really appreciate you bringing me on. I'm a big fan, so this is a big deal to me, actually. So I really appreciate it.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much. No problem. And everyone who's watching, make sure you like and subscribe to Dark Sorcery.